what would happen, with most people living in the city once their kids got to be school age? What were their decisions and who was doing what?
I mean, when you talk about decisions, you're talking about privilege of choice, right? Because there's families in this, like if you say family in the city, that encompasses any number of type of families. We're talking about, areas that house in, Harbor East, the Four Seasons, and then half a mile down you've got Perkins Homes. And so you have some of the most, egregious disparities in income and socioeconomics than you do across the country. I mean, Perkins Homes is the largest public housing project east of the Mississippi. And then, half a mile away, you have the Four Seasons, you have Hyatt, the Sonesta, all these different places that are catering to people that look very, very different than the majority of the population in Baltimore. And so thinking about what families look like, what families need, how people are using resources like the schools, that depends on the different neighborhoods in this city, which is unfortunate. We shouldn't have these divided and silo neighborhoods, which is one of the things DBFA is working to, change, is to connect communities across the city, especially in the downtown areas. But when you're thinking about how families are using these resources, a family that has the privilege of choice, you asked about decisions, right? So a family that has the privilege to choose, is my kid, when they're young, gonna go to a private daycare, or maybe I'll do a nanny share, maybe I'll hire a private nanny, maybe I'll be a stay-at-home mom. That's a really different set of choices than someone who's single, maybe has more than one child, using a voucher system to get daycare covered. Like that track and that decision that those families are making, they're choices born of limited choices. Whereas if you're in the middle class and the upper middle class here in the city, or even higher and able to afford some of those really beautiful houses down in Harbor Place, you're talking about a really different set of choices. And so being aware of the ways in which the school system is catering to some families at the expense of others, it's something you have to be really aware of.
Somebody gets their kid to 6 and they do have a choice.
Yep.
What does the choice of a private school cost them versus the public school?
I mean, I think that there's a couple of different things that it costs them. And I think there's a couple of different things it costs the school. If a family decides to send their kid to a private school for any number of reasons, financially it's going to cost them, certainly out of pocket. And they're going to be dipping double financially, right? We're paying some of the highest property taxes in the state to help offset the cost that we're one of the poorest school district in the state. So you're going to be paying your property taxes, whether you own your home or you rent it, you're paying the pass through to your landlord so that they can pay the property tax. And then you're paying for private school tuition, which in this city can range anywhere from low $5,000s for a parochial school up to $20,000 a year if you're going to some of the more expensive schools in the north area of the city. So you're paying your property taxes, you're paying your tuition, but I think that there's a bigger cost to it too, which is to say there's a bunch of research that shows really good data that suggests that children growing up in diverse schools have better opportunities to have a more rich understanding of what the world looks like, to understand that not everyone is coming from the same situation. I don't mean that in a charitable way and that they feel some sort of sense of obligation to, pay forward their good fortune. I mean in the sense that they're forced to think more critically. They're forced to confront their own sense of what the world looks like versus what it looks like in their home. And that also changes the makeup of the school. So I said, it costs the family something, it costs the school something too, to lose families to the private system or to the county. I always joke that when you're pregnant in Baltimore City, you're in the middle class, you make 2 phone calls. First you call the OB and then you call the real estate agent. And that kind of progression of like first come love, then comes marriage, then comes a baby, then comes housing, that's the school system losing, and it's the individual schools losing the creativity and the time and the opportunity to have another family within their school community. It's also the system losing overall the ability to serve that student. It's the loss of state funding to have that student's earmark come out. And because we fund each school per pupil, not per building, that earmark, that's money that's coming out of the school district's budget that could be paying for heating or roof repairs. It might not necessarily be going to a teacher or a social worker. We have school buildings. Of the 163 buildings in the district, more than half of them have been deemed, in need of great repair, and some of them have been deemed irrevocably, beyond repair. And so to think about what the school system loses when a family decides to leave not just the school system but the city, we're talking massive losses that matter to the aggregate system in huge ways.